there was joy in the room. There was true, pure joy and laughter and honesty. And I hadn't heard honesty in so long.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Well, hello, you beautiful spirits out there in the four corners of the world, wherever you may be listening to this episode. I am so thankful you are here listening to another episode of Sober Speak. I know you have so many more things to do with your time, and I appreciate you investing it in our little fledgling podcast here. And so anyway, that, ladies and gentlemen, was the voice of Miss Maria R. that you heard at the beginning of this episode today. You're going to hear so much more from her in just a moment, but first things first. This episode, this one right here, right now, at this moment, is brought to you by April and Margaret. April and Margaret went to our website, soberspeak.com. You know what they did? They clicked on the donate tab and they made a contribution. Thank you. Thank you so much, April and Margaret, for your generous contribution. This episode is for you. All right. So you're going to be listening to Maria R. today. Like I said, she's going to talk about being a closet drinker, which I'm sure that many of you will be able to relate to. And one of my favorite parts is where she talked about how she drank out of sippy cups that literally had Mommy's Timeout and Mommy's Brew written on the cups. Maria has been to 26, count them, 26 Jimmy Buffett concerts, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, she has a special connection to the song by Brandi Carlile called That Wasn't Me. And we also end up talking about Maria with her faith at length, and I just know you're going to enjoy the entire episode. So, I was trying to think about what to do this week, and, I realized that I had been sharing so much listener feedback throughout all the previous episodes, but I really wasn't sharing much from within our secret Facebook group. And as a reminder, if you want to join that Facebook group, just send me your email address associated to your Facebook account at johnjohn@soberspeak.com. But I wanted to read some from samplings from this Facebook community that has been formed here and is just absolutely delighting my heart. And there's so much activity in there. There's no way I can get to all of this, but I just wanted to read a few things that are in the Facebook group. And just from today, as I am recording this, Mr. Peter went into the Facebook group this morning and he said, "Good morning. It's Monday. It's raining and I'm in a funk. I don't want to be at work. I have earbuds in and I'm listening to the podcast number 2, Alex story. The number 2 episode within Sober Speak is what he's talking about. And he says, hopefully the mood will change. Peace and sobriety, my friends. And he had many, many people respond to his comment. I'm just picking out a couple of them here, but Jim S. recommended another episode, Brenda J., that he could listen to. Margaret, April, Barbara, Dave, Sarah, they all provided some uplifting comments for Peter. And that's exactly what I was hoping would happen with this Facebook community. And what it would turn into is that you all would be out there supporting one another. And, I know, and I don't expect this Facebook group or this podcast to be a substitute for an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. But, as well as we can do online, we'll get as close as possible. We've had many people posting post within the Facebook group. Sarah and the other Sarah, both the Sarahs, Carol and Dave, have posted some great reminders and meditation for people all in recovery. We are welcoming new members into the community. And when we were doing that last week, Carol and Lolinda wrote in and said they were members of the Twisted Sisters group in Washington. And I just absolutely love that name, Twisted Sister Group. But Toby posted inside the group, and he said that he is 24 hours sober and looking for some support from the group. And I thought, oh my goodness, 24 hours, what a delicate time. I'm just glad that he was vulnerable enough to post within our group. Dave posted a song by Joe Walsh in there. I'll let you see it when you're in there if you're not in there already. And let me see what else happened. Tina was in the group, and she has some questions regarding the amends process and an experience in that arena. And Barbara posted in response to that, she said, "It took me a while to pay off a surgeon who saved my life. It was only a small amount that I owed him that the insurance didn't pay. Soon after, I came face to face with that surgeon at a funeral, and I could hold my head up. I don't know if he knew anything about it because of his office accountants and such, but I knew in big capital letters and 2 exclamation points. And that I just love to hear stories like that. And then yours truly, posted in this Sober Speak group at one point, probably a couple of months ago or so now. And I posted, I fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous because ... and then let people fill in the blanks. And I'm telling you, the responses just came flowing in. Cassandra posted, and I can't read everything that was posted. I just picked out a few of them here to kind of go over. But Cassandra posted, she said, I fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous because, quote, it saved my dad's life. Now, folks, that's the perspective of an Al-Anon within the group. Megan P. wrote in, she said, it taught me how to handle life, literally. It enabled me to take a deep breath again. Also, literally, I was having panic attacks before AA, and it gave me my best friends. I could go on and on. Jackie posted, she said, AA loved me when I couldn't love myself. I'll never forget the first time I heard, I love you, and I burst into tears. How beautiful. Dave posted and he said, right from the start, it just felt like home. It resonated truth. It made God feel real for me. It saved my life. And so I love to hear and see those responses like that. Jonathan actually posted a picture of his moment of serenity on the golf course out in one of the Carolinas, if I'm not mistaken. But he was running around the golf course one morning, and he said, this is serenity for me. He posted that in the group, and we're able to celebrate birthdays. I've seen people celebrating 40-year birthdays in there, 1-year birthdays in there, 5-year birthdays in there, 9-month birthdays in there, and I just love it, right? You see people in sobriety and getting some time under their belt. So anyway, that's it. I know you're going to enjoy this episode with Miss Maria, and we'll have some more listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy, Maria. Okay, everybody. So today we are sitting here with Miss Maria. Can you say hello, Maria? Introduce yourself and give your sobriety date if you wish to do such, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maria, and I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is January 18th, 2014.
So, Maria, what's a nice girl like you doing in a podcast like this? In other words, how did a lovely young woman like you make it into Alcoholics Anonymous?
By the grace of God.
There you go.
That's
Good
the answer that my sponsor would want me to say.
There you go.
And I believe it. I believe it. If you would have told me 5-6 years ago that going through the nightmare that brought me here would have saved my life, I would never have believed it. But this program has just given me back to me. I'm so grateful.
God bless you. Okay, so let's talk a little then about that nightmare that brought you into the program. Can you take me through some of the days or years up to coming into Alcoholics Anonymous? Just whatever you want to share about that period of time.
Well, first of all, I kind of came to the game late because I was in my 40s when I really started drinking alcoholically.
So had you drank before that?
Yeah, I was a social drinker. And there were definitely times where I went overboard, but, you know, those were far and few between. And it kind of snuck up on me.
Really?
I was in my 40s, and, you know, I really kind of blame the wine industry. I look at how they have glamorized and romanticized the, you know, all of us soccer mommies with sippy cups full of wine glasses watching our kids play. And it took me by surprise. I thought that that's what I was supposed to be. So while I was making dinner, I'd have a glass of wine, and it eventually just got more and more often, where I didn't even realize what was happening to me. And at the same time, you know, life was happening. My kids were getting older. I have 3 beautiful kids who I adore. And my dad was very sick. And, you know, I just had life stuff happening. And I thought, wow, that one glass of wine while making dinner, and then during dinner, and then maybe even a glass after dinner, it was kind of making me a little bit calm and low key. And I even fooled myself into thinking that alcohol made me a better mommy, because if I'm calm, then I'm able to withstand the life that was happening around me. And eventually it took over.
Wow. Okay, so was there a particular event where that started happening? It sounds like there probably wasn't. It was just a combination of things. And all of a sudden, like you said, it just snuck up on you and you started drinking heavier than you had before.
Yeah, it really did just sneak up. All my friends were drinking, you know, and we were all laughing about the sippy cups, like I was saying, the literal sippy cups that say mommy's time out on them, or the bottles of wine that are, you know, called mommy's brew or whatever it was. I thought it was cute, and I thought I looked grown up and adult and like all the other mommies out there with my glass of wine. And, you know, some people can do that. Some people can have 1 or 2 glasses of wine, and I used to be able to, until I just used alcohol as a way to escape.
So you mentioned your dad passing during that, or there was something
Well,
going
he had
on with your
been-
dad,
he-
or he was sick, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He was sick. He was sick for about 3 years. He passed a year almost to the day of me finding sobriety. So at his funeral, I was a year sober, which I'm so grateful for that. I attended that funeral and I was there for my family. I was there for him in his final days. I loved on him, and he knew that I was going to be okay.
Is your mom still alive?
She is still alive.
Great.
And the one thing I just thought of was, I remember at some point after my dad's funeral, me and my family, I have 4 siblings. We all went out to dinner, and I just kind of snuck it in there. And I said, by the way, you guys, I just want you to know that today's my 1-year birthday. And my mom said, I am so grateful to have my Maria back.
So did they realize that there was an issue with your drinking?
Oh, they sure did.
Okay, so they knew, and how long had they known that? Did they see it sneaking up on you as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for sure. All of my family and all of my husband's family are all in Michigan, and we're the only ones here. During the summers, we would go up to Michigan and spend time at a lake house that we had. And while I was there by myself with my 3 kids, my husband would stay here and kind of just come in and out during the summer. But we love Michigan. We love the idea of our kids running around on a warm summer day and catching butterflies and fishing and everything. And it was wonderful. But the problem was that on weekends, it was really fun, and there would be lots of fun people everywhere and lots of alcohol everywhere. And it was always 5 o'clock somewhere. So I started drinking like everybody else. Eventually, though, Monday would come and pretty much everybody else on the lake would go home, and I would continue drinking because that's what my body had grown accustomed to. That's what I knew. And again, it was making me a better mom. So why not? Mm-hmm. And then I remember at one point, I'm not still exactly sure how this happened, but suddenly my husband, who I thought was in Dallas, showed up at my bedside because I was trying to fool everybody that I had the flu. I had some mysterious, horrible, awful thing that was going on in me that I needed to be in bed all the time with bottles hidden around the house and stuff. And he suddenly was there. And I knew, wow, this is bad.
Wow. So was that the final straw, so to speak? I mean,
No.
Okay. But you knew, but everybody had a clue at that point.
Everybody was onto me. And I really thought that I was getting away with it. I didn't think that my drinking was as out of control as it apparently really was.
Do any of your siblings or any of your family members deal with alcohol
No.
or drug addiction? No?
No,
You got
I
the
am
lucky
the
straw.
lone wolf. And, my mom says that maybe there was some problems in the past with some of my distant, relatives, older uncles or whatever, but really, no, it's just me.
So we have a common friend we were talking about just before we started this podcast, and that's Mr. Ronnie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason
Hi, Ron.
hi, Ron. And the reason I mention him is because you had said that you were very fortunate when you fell into AA, so to speak, that you were able to kind of stand on the shoulders of some, giants, if you will, in the program. I know you met Ron, you met some other people. Talk to me about what you were saying here before we got started.
Oh my gosh, I was so lucky to have met these like icons of my home group almost. And Ron always says to this day, very simple things. Maria, easy does it. Easy does it, Maria. Where's God in this? And when I first came into the program, I saw all the little signs all over the wall, and I thought, oh, it is what it is and takes what it takes. And yeah, that's real cute, but it didn't mean anything to me until I started having that repetition of people like Ron reminded me and making it real to me instead of just a sign on the wall.
What do you mean by making it real?
I mean, Easy Does It, for instance. I mean, God doesn't want us to be full of fear and worry. God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. That's a gift that this program gives us, and that's what he wants for us. So I guess that's what I mean, is just making it real, putting it into my life every part of my day.
So you talked about your sponsor as well. We were chatting a little bit about her before we got started and how much you respect her and how much she's helped you. It's Miss Susan. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about Susan a little bit and your relationship with her and when y'all got together during the program, and talk about Susan a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Last time on my birthday, when I got my chip, I made the comment that if I had to go through everything that I did just to meet my sponsor, I would do it all over again. I look up to her so much. She is just a living example of this program in every aspect of her life. You know, she teaches me constantly, you know, God isn't doing this to you. He's doing this for you. And she tells me, you know, Maria, look for the gift. What's the gift in this? You know what? She's just so wise. She's just really the wisest person I think I've ever known.
So I know also before you came over here, you had mentioned that one of the first Sober Speak episodes that you listened to was the one with Michelle talking about a parrot head.
Yeah.
Because you apparently are a parrot head. And for those
I am.
For those who don't know what a parrot head is, why don't you go ahead and tell them?
Well, a parrot head is basically a Jimmy Buffett fanatic, which I am. I've been to 26 of his concerts, which sounds like a lot if you haven't heard that before, but to real parrot heads out there, they think I'm just a baby.
Do you go? I know he plays up here in Frisco every year. Have you been to any of those?
Oh,
yet?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been to lots of those. You know, I love Jimmy Buffett's music. And the concerts are just so much fun, and it's just a party. It's just a great place to see people being happy, and there is a lot of drinking involved. I didn't really trying to think. I don't know that I ever really allowed myself to get so out of control at a Jimmy Buffett concert. I was more of a closet drinker. Mm-hmm. I probably should have said that before. Yeah, I was a closet drinker, so I would behave myself in public situations like a concert or a party or an event and just be white knuckling it until I got home.
Right.
And could find relief.
And that's a big reason I wanted to have you on, because I know that there are a lot of what you call closet drinkers out there. Mm-hmm. And I know that it even talks about this in the 12 and 12. It points out that there are women, females, mm-hmm. Who started late, but then gained up ground very quickly.
Right.
There is that little subculture or whatever you want to call it within Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. And I knew that people could relate to this story. Tell me a little bit about your notepad that you brought in. I saw that you brought in a notepad. I go, oh, good. You have some notes with you. I'm glad, because I want people to have organized thoughts, right, as we're going mm-hmm. through this, as organized as possible, even though it's going to be more of a conversation style. But you told me a quote. What did you say about your notes that you and your sponsor talk about?
Well, when I was working the fourth step, Susan told me, Maria, if we don't write it down in black and white, we'll act it out in living color. Oh, you know, writing it down in black and white holds me accountable. Now it's real. Now I've just made this fourth step come to life. It's kind of like the proof that whatever is in my fourth step, I'm going to acknowledge it and own it. And then in the fifth step, I can find the relief from it, find out where did that issue come from? What are my fears in that? But if I don't write it down and acknowledge it, then I'm still in denial.
I want to read something here that you sent to me the other day that Ron had sent to you that came out of the 24-hour-a-day book, and I absolutely loved it. It said, when you come into an AA meeting, you're not just coming into a meeting, you're coming into a new life. And I thought that was a fabulous quote, saying, reading, if you will. So what has it meant to you then to come into this new life, and not just coming into a meeting, but coming into, like we said, a new life, a new way of living?
Well, just this morning I was at a women's meeting, and this topic was similar. And I got this memory of years ago. I was in a grocery store, and I heard this song overhead, and I highly recommend it to you. It's by Brandi Carlile, and it's called "That Wasn't Me." And I did some research on it a while ago, and sure enough, it is a song that she wrote, I think, about a friend in her addiction. And how when we're in our addiction, that's not the real us. That's not the us that God wants us to be. That's a different version. It's the sick version. It's the alcoholic version, but it's not the real. It wasn't the real me. So the quote that what was it again? Now,
it was when you come into an AA meeting, you're not just coming into a meeting, you're coming into a new life.
Yeah, I love that quote, because I mean, that's when every single time I walk into a meeting, I feel like I can breathe. Like I go into a meeting and the most honest, real version of myself comes out. And hopefully I'm able to take that outside and share that. And I can share that by sponsorship. I can share that by just talking to somebody. I can, sharing my experience, strength, and hope. That is where life begins, right there.
It is. And you're right. I believe, it even talks about in the book that, we're not just here to stay within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous only, right? We can take all these skills and all these various spiritual lessons that we've learned over the years and take them out to our families, to the people behind the cash registers, and throughout the entire world.
I'll tell you a good story. I was in a women's meeting one time, and this woman that I didn't recognize walked in the door, and you could tell it was her very first meeting ever. She was terrified. She had that horrible look on her face. And she sat down, and it was her time to share, because it was a really small, maybe 8 women meeting. And so she was asked to share, and she said, "You know what? I almost didn't even come into this room, but somebody in the parking lot smiled at me. Oh. And that was enough to bring me in." That right there, that's somebody giving the gift of just a smile. Service work doesn't have to be always putting the coffee pot on, although that's great. Service work is just being there for the newcomer, being there for somebody when they need you.
Yeah. And for me, I even kind of get out of my own head sometimes when I'm kind of processing something or trying to let something go. I'll sit there in a meeting and actually pray for other people that are in that room, not only in that room, but outside of that room. It's for me, it just kind of helps me to get out of my own head and out of my own skin, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to be continuing here with Maria in just a moment. Just a reminder, you are listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the World Wide Web at soberspeak.com. There you'll find about 70 plus other episodes. You'll also find the donate button on the website, which you can use if and only if the Spirit moves you to do such. Please keep in mind this is a podcast funded by you, the listener. Sober Speak is a self-supporting organization through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. Okay, so back to Maria. You had mentioned that you had been to treatment before you got to Alcoholics Anonymous. Am I right about that?
Right.
Okay. And how many times did you go to treatment?
Well, I went twice. What I know now is that the first time I went, it was just because my family kept telling me I was an alcoholic. I had not by any chance conceded to my innermost self that that was the case. And so I went for them. I went for 28 days. I played the game. I smiled pretty. I told them that what they wanted to hear, and they let me go home. And I remember driving away, my husband coming to pick me up and driving away down the expressway. And it suddenly seemed like every billboard, every happy hour sign was screaming at me with alcohol. It was like right in my face. It is what it felt like. And so I didn't stay sober very long. I hadn't really dealt with the real issues that were bringing me to the drink.
So looking back on that now, that experience in treatment, because, a lot of people go through this. When you say not dealing with it, do you think it's just you weren't ready, or how can you describe that?
I just don't think God was ready for me to be sober at that time. I still think he had some lessons for me to learn. By the time that I went the second time, and this is my sobriety date, I will never forget it. On January 18th, 2014, I was standing in our bedroom, and it was about 11:30 in the morning, and I had just had like half of one of those little mini bottles of wine. And so I wasn't drunk, but not many people need to have the edge off at 11:30 in the morning, right? But I did. And my husband came in and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I'm other than it being God, I'm not sure what else it could have been, but I found myself saying the three magic words, "I need help." And at that moment, I just truly felt like this flush of love or something, this flush of something just came over me, and I knew that I was going to be okay. I can't say that the obsession, that craving was gone immediately, but I knew that it was done. It was this game was over, and I wasn't going to have to play anymore. Now, at that point, we said, okay, let's make a game plan. What are we going to do? Where am I going to go? Because I need to go to treatment. And I kept saying, I really want to go to Hazelden. That's where my sponsor went. I've heard great things about it. And I think my husband wanted me to kind of stick closer to home, at least in Texas.
So when you said that's where your sponsor went, so it sounds like from the time that you went to that first treatment center and when you came to Hazelden, you had been in and out of AA at that time. Is that what's going on here? When you said
I was still going to some meetings. I was still pretending really well that, golly, the truth is, I couldn't even be honest about my sobriety date. I would go into a meeting having just been drinking 2 hours before, yet I would give the wrong sobriety date.
Okay, so you're going to meetings during that time. How long was that period from the first treatment center to the second treatment center?
Well, the first one was June of 2013. So until actually February. What happened was that we did a bunch of research. My husband is very analytical. He likes to do research. So we did a bunch of research on different places, and eventually I got my way, and Hazelden said, we can get her in, but we can't get her in for another 8 days.
Is that up in Minnesota, that one?
It is.
Okay.
It is. So I kind of white knuckled it. I mean, I feel like people just sat on top of me to keep me sober during that 8 days. Now, unfortunately, when I got there, I was there for about 5 days, and I was loving it because I was so ready. I was so ready to let go of this burden of alcohol. I just wanted to be rid of it. And I was, instead of like the first treatment center where I just told them what they wanted to hear, I really was being truthful and honest for the first time. And what I found out now, our insurance cut me off and sent me home because they look at that 8 days of sobriety before I got to Hazelden. So between that morning where I felt that flush of love come over me and the time I got on a plane, there was that 8-day period that I stayed sober. And my insurance company said, well, if you can do it for 8 days, then you don't need treatment. And they sent me home.
Oh my goodness.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying because I was so ready. I wanted to learn how do I stay sober? How do I keep doing this? How do I keep this feeling?
And so they sent you home. So now you're at home, and now what? Do you have a different attitude, so to speak, about AA and going in there?
Well, here was another kind of a gift. Hazelden has a program I think it's called The Lodge, and it's a separate retreat house that's on the campus of their center. And you can go there and you get the same programming. So you get to go to the same speakers, you get counseling, you get all this stuff. I sound like an advertisement for them. I don't mean to be. But you pay out of pocket and you just don't get any, like a doctor checking in on you at all. So it's basically the exact same thing as an inpatient. You can go for a day or you can go, I don't care, a month, whatever. They couldn't find a spot for me until like 2.5 weeks after I had returned back to Dallas. So I was in Dallas just, going to meetings, trying to be honest and talking to people, kind of just doing it the right way this time. And then 2.5 weeks later, got back on a plane, went back
up there.
Hazelden. And
how long did you stay?
Probably about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you learn during that time? Do you remember it being a positive experience?
It was. It was. And, it was just so different now because my willingness was there. And so things that they could have been saying to me, person could have been saying the exact same, just the perfect thing 6 months earlier, and I wouldn't have heard it. But now my ears, my heart were ready.
Right. Your spirit had opened up for whatever reason. And, if somehow we could bottle that up for people and not sell it, but just give it to people
right,
to where their spirit could open up and all of a sudden they're able to hear things in a different way and see things in a different way. Oh, this would be a much better world. But
sure would.
It's individual for each person, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you get back to Dallas then, and then you start going to meetings. Tell me about that. I mean, were you looking at the steps in a different way? Was your relationship with the group a little bit different? Tell me how you were feeling.
At some point, my current sponsor, I knew that I only wanted her to sponsor me, but I had to ask her 4 or 5 times to take me on. And each time she kept saying no because she had so many other sponsees and she didn't feel like she could really give me what I needed. And so I had other women that were helping me, but never serious. I never took it seriously enough to really be working the steps. At some point, one of the women that was sponsoring me was also she was being sponsored by Susan, and she moved away. And I saw that gap right there, and I jumped on it, and I grabbed Susan, and I said, please, please, now will you take me? And yeah, so I was really, really lucky with that one.
It's like when somebody gets fired at your office and you say, hey, can I have your stapler? All right.
Right.
Well,
yeah. And then at that point, I really got into the steps. I got into meetings. I got into anything that Susan was telling me to. And she's not just about the big book. She's about, your spiritual development in many, many other ways from different teachers. So I just kind of jump on board whatever she tells me to do.
So did you have any sort of spiritual/religious background before you got to Alcoholics Anonymous? And and if you did, has your viewpoint and how you relate to that particular spiritual practice changed since you got into AA?
Yeah, well, I was raised in a very Catholic family. I have a brother that's a priest. So pretty Catholic family, went to Catholic schools all my life. And I love the Catholic faith.
I'm glad you're saying that. You hear a lot of people say about how they're a recovering Catholic and all that sort of
stuff. That hurts my heart every single time I hear it, because I would never say that ever about any other religion. So it hurts my heart when I hear that.
And I get it. I do. I get when I hear some of those things about all sorts of different religions. But I also know that religion has done a whole lot of good in this world as well. And there's
it was pretty instrumental in our big book too.
And it says we are quick to see where religious people are right.
Right.
And I get that. So anyway, so you grew up a Catholic. You love the Catholic Church. Tell me about that.
I love the Catholic faith. And I received all the sacraments that I'm supposed to, and I go to church on Sunday. We've raised our children Catholic, but I still didn't have that real relationship with God. I was just kind of going through the motions, doing what looked right. And when I came into the program, and first of all, when I came in, I was not convinced that I was an alcoholic. I still wanted to fight that really hard. And so I was coming up with different terms. Somebody said, oh, well, maybe you're alcoholic light. And I ran with it. Yeah, that's what I am. I must be alcoholic light. I don't even qualify. So why am I here?
And like a lot of people will say, that's like being a little bit pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Either you are or you're not.
So when I came into the program and I was just fighting it so hard, and I was sure that the big book was probably like anti-religious, it's a cult, or I was just looking for an excuse. And then I saw the St. Francis prayer. And I love, and the Catholic faith, we sing that song. We sing, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. And just for those who are listening who may not know what Maria is referring to, because we have a lot of people who listen to this who don't know the program very well, but it's from the Step 11 and the 12 and 12 of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a prayer in there called the St. Francis Prayer, written by St. Francis many, many moons ago. Right.
I don't claim to be a historian on that, but you all used to sing it in church.
Right. And so when I saw that was in our big book,
12 and 12.
The 12 and 12, it gave me such comfort. And I felt like, okay, this might be okay. And then I saw all the different prayers in there and I thought, well, wow, fourth and fifth step, that's kind of like confession. And I believe in confession. I believe in saying, here, this is where I've been wrong. How can I make this right? That's what I do when I go to confession, and the 10th step.
Yeah, the Catholics invented that fifth step, I think. They had it down long before it came
Well,
to
Father
Alcoholics
Dowling
Anonymous.
was involved,
Oh, yeah,
but,
that's right.
but the 10th step, that to me is in the Catholic faith, we call that the examination of conscience. What did I do during the day? What did I do? What did I do wrong? But also, what did I do really well today? So I found so much comfort in knowing that, okay, maybe this isn't a cult anymore. Maybe I can get on board and maybe I'll even find sobriety.
And so when you would go to the services, with the homilies, is that what it's called? When you would listen to the homilies, did you hear it in a different way than when you heard it before you got sober, so to speak?
I think life in general, I look at people differently. Those people who might say, I'm a recovering Catholic. Well, I'm called to love them too. So now I truly look at people and I look in their faces and I just think, you are a child of God, just like I am. So because you're a child of God, we're related. And I'm called to love you. And I see people differently, not just Catholics, this isn't about being Catholic. This is about being a child of God. That's the bigger picture right there.
That's right. We're all God's kids, aren't we? All of us. And it says in the book, as you know, love and tolerance of
Is
others
our code.
Is our code. And that goes for all.
Right.
What else? What have we not covered? Is there anything in particular you want to say about sobriety that we haven't covered thus far that you want to kind of get out there? Look at it this way. There are going to be people listening to this. And these are always the people that I'm, I guess, most concerned with, because I get letters all the time and I get emails and I get Instagram messages saying, I'm not sober or I'm considering sobriety. I'm thinking about going to a meeting. I'm not sure if it is for me. You went through that, right? For a long time.
Right.
What would you share from your experience that would talk to folks like that out there?
Just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. It might, I always am kind of envious of the people that walk in and say, oh, on day one, I fell in love with AA. Well, believe me, that wasn't my case at all. It took me, I really wish I could remember, but I'm going to say a good 9 months before I really started to understand it. And I say a lot in meetings too, that the big book itself was just like Chinese. I didn't understand what it was saying, even though now I read it and it's so simplistic. It makes so much sense. The big book to me is so alive, but not when I first came in and when I was so broken and I was so full of shame and, talking about God and my faith. As faithful as I am to the Catholic faith, I still wanted to be invisible to God because I was so sure that he was so ashamed of me. And I didn't love myself enough. So how could God still love me? That's not even possible.
How could God still love me? And I think a lot of people have that exact same sentiment.
Right. And we come into the program and we don't love ourselves. I can't imagine how somebody really does. Because when you walk into the doors of AA, that's not your finest moment. It was so hard for me to walk in. I was saying the other day, my very first meeting was right up the road here. And I sat in the back and I basically curled into a ball and just prayed that nobody would notice that I was even there. And I just wanted to find out, what is this? What happens in a meeting? What's going on here? And I joked that, the chairperson I thought was the president of the group. And
right.
How do they know everybody's name? And yet there was joy in the room. There was true, pure joy and laughter and honesty. And I hadn't heard honesty in so long because I certainly didn't know how to express it. And when I went into the rooms of AA and I'd hear people say they're 30 years sober and 40 years sober. And I thought, how? I didn't even know when I walked into AA that I was supposed to be sober for my lifetime. I just wanted my family off my case.
Right.
I wanted them to stop telling me I was an alcoholic.
Get the heat off.
Yeah. Thank God I eventually conceded and said, I am an alcoholic. By the grace of God, I say that because He's brought me this far because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's not that my faith alone couldn't have done that, but the combination of my faith and this program brings such peace and serenity to my life. And I have tools now. I know how to handle things when life spins out of control. It's not perfect, and I don't always have an immediate answer, but I know how to think things through. I know how to pray deeply for an answer. I know that it's easier for me to give things to God than for me to try to figure them out, because I've tried that before and it doesn't work well.
When you went into that first meeting and you were kind of curled up in the back of the room, in the back of the room, do you remember what your impressions were of the meeting versus what you thought you were going to find when you actually went into the meeting?
The truth is I really, truly did not know anything about AA. Once in a while, I'd hear people crack jokes about, there's a 12-step program, for chocolate or what, but I didn't know what the 12 steps were. What does that mean? I didn't know how many people were going to be in the meeting. I didn't know. I just honestly did not know anything about it. And I feel like I should tell you this, though, and it's kind of going in a different direction, but I just thought of it. When I was really heavy in my addiction, my dear husband, God bless him, called Dallas Intergroup and said, my wife has a drinking problem. What do I do? And they said, well, you go to Al-Anon. And he said, no, you don't understand. Right. Listen to me. My wife has a drinking problem. What do I do? And they said, you need to go to Al-Anon. And so before I ever stepped foot in the doors of AA, he had already been going to Al-Anon for, I think, like 4 months.
Oh, okay, good. He took him up on it. A lot of people don't,
Right. And so he still goes. He's got his men's groups that he goes to. And AA is so part of our life. When I first got into the program, I would hide my big book. I would hide like any evidence that I was in the program whatsoever. And now, it's an open subject. We talk about it with our kids who are 18, 19, and 21. So they're at those ages where it needs to be discussed. And my youngest son on a daily basis still says, so Mom, what are you doing today? Going to a meeting? Every single day. So I'm held accountable by him too.
That's great. All right. Well, I appreciate it. This has been anything else that you want to share before we close up? Just making sure I'm pointing at our notebook because I want to make sure that we cover. I just want to make sure you get everything out you want to get out.
You were asking about like what would somebody brand new walking in the door need to know, and I always love what I learned about steps 1, 2, and 3. And if you understand nothing else, understand that step 1 is I can't. Step 2 is he can. And step 3 is I think I'll let him. That's what it takes right there.
That's it. That's the whole program right there. Or at least most of the program, right? Yeah.
There's a couple of other steps after that.
That's right.
But those will get you a really good start.
They will. Maria, this has been just a pleasure. I sure do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule.
You're so welcome.
To stop by today, and God bless you. And I guess hello, Ron. Hello, Sarah. I said Sarah, Miss Susan. Yeah. And thank you for letting Maria come over here to be with me today. Susan, right? I think you asked permission.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. So what'd you think about Miss Maria, that soccer mom? I know we have some other soccer moms out there in this world. I would love to know what you think. Even if you're not a soccer mom, you can still write in and let us know what you're thinking. I'm at John, John, at Soberspeak.com. I will pass on any comments to her as I receive them, and comments about any of the other speakers who you want to contact me about. So let's get on to a little listener feedback. Ben, my main man, Ben, writes in from down under. He says, "Hi, John. Due to my work, I travel between Australia and New Zealand constantly. I'm on my second year of sobriety, and doors have closed and others have opened. Thank you for keeping my head sane." I love your podcast, and I listen to them all over the land of OZ and NZ. Took me a while. I had to figure out, I actually had to look that up. Apparently, Australia is referred to as the land of OZ, the land of Oz, and NZ is obviously New Zealand. But anyway, I can't explain what or how it works, but it does. I would appreciate being added to the secret Facebook page. I live on the Sunshine Coast of Australia, and my home group is the, hope I get this right, Maroochydore Monday night meeting. Let me know if you ever make it to Australia. I'd love to meet you and show you round. P.S. Your laugh is great. Keep laughing, mate. Everyone has an opinion. That's what makes us different. Ben from OZ. Well, Ben from Down Under, number one, I'm so glad to see that you are in that Facebook group. And if I ever make it down to the Sunshine Coast of Australia, I will definitely look you up, and we'll go to the Maroochydore Monday night meeting. All right, thanks for writing in, Ben. All right, Tammy writes in, and Tammy is an Al-Anon, and Tammy says, "Hi, John. I live in Southern California. I heard Sober Speak listening to Spencer on the Recovery Show." I want to just pause here for a second and say this. What she's talking about there is the Recovery Show, which is another show that Spencer, my friend Spencer T, hosts. And we are going to be getting together with Spencer to go through some of the steps of Al-Anon here on an upcoming episode. But if you're in Al-Anon and you haven't found that podcast yet, I would highly recommend it. Once again, it's called The Recovery Show. All right, back to the letter. I am trying to glean knowledge and insight as my 23-year-old daughter is struggling with alcohol. I am attending Al-Anon and just got a sponsor to start working the steps. Well, good for you, Tammy. Thank you for all you do on Sober Speak. These podcasts give me hope and continue to encourage me to stay inside my own hula hoop. And Tammy, it's a very popular phrase within Al-Anon, just in case you're not aware of that. Stay within your own hula hoop. I get it, Tammy. Ella writes in on Instagram, and she says, "Love the podcast. I found Sober Speak by searching for Recovery Podcast on Castbox. It is a podcast player. I love the format, and I find the stories so relatable. I live in Houston, Texas, and my sobriety date is 4/27/2015. Well, Ella, thank you for writing in on Instagram. We sure do appreciate it, and congratulations on your 3 years. You must have just passed. Well, no, you haven't quite passed 3 years of sobriety yet by the time this comes out, but you're coming up on it. Okay, so let me hop in here real quick with a little comment before we continue on, and that is I realized after I had made this recording that I was thinking the entire time that this was 2018 as opposed to 2019. Therefore, some of my calculations were off. So to you, the Sober Speak audience, I make an amends. I was wrong, and with God's help, I'll try not to do that again. Now back to the recording. Lauren writes in on Instagram and he says, "Hi, John. I just discovered your podcast this morning. I am 4 months sober and was looking for a meeting between my meetings. You made my day with your podcast. Thank you. Well, Lauren, you made your day by writing in and contacting me and giving me that message. I sure do appreciate it. Morgan T writes in and she says, "Hi, John. Thank you. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic named Morgan who lives in Austin, Texas. I am originally from Gunnison, Colorado. I was introduced to AA 6 years ago, but wasn't done drinking at the time. Now I have just over 2 months sobriety, and I'm feeling near ready to find a sponsor and to begin to work the steps, which is so desperately needed. I go to meetings almost every day. I consider Western Trails here in Austin my home group." Well, if anybody is listening from Western Trails, tell Morgan I said hello. I found your podcast by searching AA. It's the first one that came up. The first one I listened to was Step 4 with David G. I intend to listen to them all. Your podcast is now my go-to when I am at the gym. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Sincerely, Morgan T. Well, if you're listening to this while you're at the gym, Miss Morgan, keep on working out. And I'm so glad you wrote in. And by the way, Gunnison, Colorado is very near Crested Butte, Colorado, which is where I will be going this summer again for the Crested Butte Mountain Conference. It's an AA conference. Okay, Frank writes in and he says, "My name is Frank. I am an alcoholic. I live in Roanoke, Virginia. Sobriety date is July 6th of 2015. I just celebrated my 80th birthday. If I had not joined the fellowship, I probably would have died years ago. My home group is the primary purpose group." Well, look at you, Frank. I love it. It looks like you started in sobriety when you were, 77, if I have that right? That is fantastic. And you're listening to podcasts. I absolutely love it. Thanks for writing in, Frank. Margaret writes in, and Margaret says, "John, I just wanted to circle back around with you and let you know how your podcasts have had a positive effect on my life. As I mentioned, I'm a member of Al-Anon and have been looking for and praying to find a meeting and a sponsor. Well, after talking to a coworker about life, she asked me if I had ever heard of Al-Anon. Funny indeed. Anyway, I have been attending a large, great all-women's group in San Francisco the last 2 weeks with her and plan to go again tonight. The next step is finding a sponsor, and I trust it will happen. Thanks for making a difference, Margaret M." Well, Margaret, by the time I hear from you again, I hope you found a good sponsor and you're able to get started on those steps. You know, I hear people all the time, "We ought to do a program on this." This is just kind of a little side note. I'm talking to myself here out loud now. I hear a lot of people asking me about how to find a sponsor, what's a good sponsor, how do you get hooked up with a sponsor? You know, I was just real fortunate. I fell into the hands of a great sponsor, and he's still my sponsor today. But I know that is not everybody's experience, and finding one can be a challenge, and it's very scary. But, you know, just remember this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be temporary. Just get started. If it doesn't work, maybe you can move on to somebody else later. Anyway, the last one here, Joe writes in on Twitter. This is one of our first responses we've actually had on Twitter. Usually it's Instagram and all sorts of other things. But anyway, afternoon, John. I am extremely excited to have run across your podcast through iHeartRadio. I am 46 and I attended AA close to 2 years ago. But since I was not a very religious person at the time, I was put off by that aspect. My wife is a Jehovah's Witness, and for the past year, I've been studying with an elder from her congregation. I've learned so much, and I'm learning more consistently, which has strengthened my faith in God. I just attended my second AA meeting last night, and I finally got some health insurance, and I'm seeing an amazing doctor to discuss my situation. I have started taking Antabuse daily, along with a couple of nutritional supplements he's recommended so far, and next Monday will be 3 weeks sober. I truly enjoy listening to your podcast during my 1.5-hour commute to work and back. So you have me for 3 hours a day. I look forward to hearing more stories and hearing Sober Speak, my quote, meeting between meetings, unquote. I hope you have a pleasant rest of your week. By the way, I live in Loganville, Georgia, just a little west of Atlanta. Thank you again, Joe. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Oh, one thing I did forget here. I want to close it out with page 164 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then, until next week, folks, have a good one. God bless.